Oslo today, the changing of the guard at the Royal Palace, since 1848, home of Norwegian kings. Until 1940, these were years of peace, tranquility, and resolute neutrality. Then came Nazi aggression, and for Norway's 3 million people, a profound change in attitude. The country's 60-year-old constitutional monarch, His Majesty King Olaf V.
The result of our experiences during the war, with the unpreparedness for war, and which was then, up till 1940, a lucky 125th of April 1940, has caused a fundamental change in the attitude of the Norwegian people. They know now that neutrality, peace-lovingness in itself is not sufficient, but that they must work actively towards bringing about peace and understanding between all the peoples of all countries, and they therefore joined the NATO organization and organized their armed forces in accordance with the theories of this organization to maintain peace and freedom throughout the world and between all nations.
In 1940, neutral Norway is coveted by Adolf Hitler. 1,700 miles of jagged coastline for his ships and U-boats, air bases nearer Britain, and a port, Narvik, for high-grade iron ore shipped by rail from Sweden, thence by ship to Germany's war factories. Narvik is ice-free, open year-round. On April 8, 1940, the Allies notify the Norwegians that minefields have been laid in Norway's territorial waters to halt this German sea traffic. The crisis finds Norway utterly unprepared. Since 1905, when she gained independence from Sweden, her king, elected by the Norwegian people themselves, has been Håkon VII, a towering Dane. He has a ragtag army of 13,000 men, no tanks, practically no heavy guns. His air force consists of 70 ancient planes and 125 pilots. Against them, the German Luftwaffe, greatest air force in the world, the German Navy, the German Army. April 9th, 1940, the first coordinated air-sea land operation in history. Nazi Germany strikes at neutral Norway. For 4 days, the Norwegians have been warned. The Nazis are on their way. Skeptical, Norway has not mobilized its 200,000 reserves. The Germans drop 6 companies of airborne troops on Oslo by noon. Oslo surrenders. The king and government flee. Within 12 hours, the Germans have landed 8,000 men from warships, hold every key position, every major airport in Norway. To the south, Hitler has blitzed Denmark in a day. It will take longer in Norway. We are a longer country, comments one observer. Some of the invaders speak excellent Norwegian. As children, they were sheltered here after World War. Now they return. German commander General Niklaus von Falkenhorst is here too. He has been at an Oslo hotel posing as a silk stocking salesman. Also here, Major Vidkun Quisling, Norwegian fascist who proclaims himself head of a new government. An ex-Bolshevik whose party has no political influence, his reputation will far exceed his role. April 10th, 1940, D+1, Oslo. Rumors spread that the British fleet is counterattacking, will shell the city. A mass psychosis grips the people. They try desperately to flee. The Norwegians call it our day of panic. By nightfall, the rumors and the exodus end. In the countryside, Norwegians try to mobilize their forces. Some of those who vow to fight have never used firearms before. Some troops guard the king and government who have fled north to Elverum near the Swedish frontier. During this chaotic mobilization, the king is being pursued by the German ambassador who wants Håkon to appoint a new government under Quisling. Håkon will refuse. All he will agree to do is to pass on German demands to his government. The German ambassador, Dr. Kurt Brauer, will try to flatter Håkon. That will fail. He will try intimidation. King Olaf, then the crown prince, tells what happened.
Dr. Brauer told my father that you must remember, sir, that you personally will be responsible for the lives of all the young Norwegians who will be laid down during the war, that you will personally be responsible for the damage done to the civilian population and to property during an armed conflict. You and no one else will be responsible. Still, my father would not give in.
Everywhere with the cool and deadly precision perfected in Poland, the Luftwaffe bombs, strafes, devastates. Elverum is smashed. Nazi soldiers carry orders, get Håkon dead or alive. Refusing to seek asylum in Sweden, the king hides in the woods with his government, including Minister of Supplies Wwii, future Secretary General of the United Nations. Hastily mobilized, ill-equipped Norwegian forces try to stem the Nazi tide. Against the Wehrmacht's modern artillery, they must pit obsolete rifles. It is a hopeless battle. Courage is not enough. Thousands are forced to surrender. Yet other Norwegians fight on, for a month in the south, for 2 months in the north, backed by the British fleet and by Allied landings. Beginning in mid-April, the Allies land in north and central Norway, at Narvik, Namsos, Mot, and Åndalsnes. British, French, and Polish forces sweep ashore in an attempt to establish beachheads against the German invaders. They score modest successes, destroy Narvik's vital port installations, take prisoners, liberate Norwegians. But their attacks are limited. The Nazis still dominate the skies. Air power is proving its supremacy over sea power in Norway. Allied command is often indecisive and faltering. A muddy waddle forward and back, Churchill calls it. The Allies are forced to withdraw. The last leave Narvik on June 8th. The Nazis have struck at France. The big war is on. The Norwegian fiasco has tumbled Neville Chamberlain. Winston Churchill is Britain's Prime Minister. The Norwegians are in despair. When I saw them withdrawing, says one officer, I almost hated the Allies more than the Germans. On June 7th, 1940, the king who has said he will abdicate rather than surrender leaves Tromsø in North Norway. With his ministers, Håkon will establish a government in exile in Britain. The battle for Norway ends. The battle against Nazi occupation and tyranny begins. 1940, all Norway is in Nazi hands. Military unpreparedness has done it, not Quisling and his fifth column, a noisy Nazi 1%, loathed by the Norwegian people. Thrown out of office 6 days after the invasion, reappointed puppet minister president in 1942, Vidkun Quisling is a posturing figurehead with no power. The real power is at his side, tough German Reichskommissar Josef Terboven. A Norwegian bishop describes him. He is something incomplete, something which never ripened. At first, the Nazis try a velvet glove occupation. We come as friends, blood brothers, chosen Nordics all. They cannot grasp the depth of hatred among Norwegians. By September 1940, the Iron Fist takes over. Nazification, Gestapo, Quisling stormtroopers, search, arrest, concentration camps. Largest of the concentration camps is Greenie near Oslo. Its director, a sadist named Kunze, quickly introduces Hitler's new order to 20,000 Norwegians held here. Brutality, torture, and death. Many of Norway's 1,500 Jews will be incarcerated here. Many will not survive the war. Soon there will be 10,000 Gestapo in Norway, one for every 300 citizens, but not enough to break the national will. A resistance fighter during the war, a man who will sail the Pacific on the raft Kon-Tiki after the war, Major Knut Haugland.
First of all, the Germans would try to Nazify the children. They sent their orders to the teachers. In a matter of 2 or 3 days, between 12 and 14,000 teachers sent their personal letters to the German authorities and told them that they were not going to teach anything else than what was in accordance with the school law and their own personal conscience. They knew what would happen. It didn't take more than a couple of days. Then lorries, army lorries, came to the schools all over the country, and the Germans arrested every 10th of the teachers. I do not think that the children ever will forget that day when the German soldiers took away their teachers. The teachers were sent up in the Arctic on forced labor. They were sent to concentration camps, in prison, and many never came back. Then the Germans wanted the priests to teach a new religion created by Adolf Hitler. They didn't agree to that. And the result was that the priests were kicked out of the churches. But I do not think that the priests ever had such a big audience as they had after that, in the woods and in secret places. This went on during the whole occupation.
There was also increasing help from the outside. Commando raids on Norwegian islands. Lofoten Islands in 1941 and 1943. Vaasa and Malay Islands in 1941. Mounted in London in coordination with the King's Free Government in exile. The attacks are manned by British commandos and Norwegian volunteers. The aim is primarily economic. Destroy fish factories supplying glycerin for munitions manufacture. Destroy shipping, industry, oil tanks. The tactic is to hit and hurt and run. On Mole, the destruction is total. Barracks, coastal guns, every German installation. Vaasa is also a thorough success. The raids have other objectives: to free Norwegians who wish to escape to England, to unnerve Nazi occupation forces, to capture German troops and local quislings, political and psychological objectives well achieved. Only indirectly do the raids serve a military purpose. They are not, like Dieppe, a feeling out and testing before invasion. A second front in Norway is never seriously contemplated. There is other help from the free outside. Supplies for the Norwegian underground. By 1945, this underground numbers 30,000 men and women, and Norway is the only major country in Europe where the communists play no important role in the resistance. Radio equipment is dropped in, put to instant use, internally and to London. The movements of the German warships Bismarck, Tirpitz, and Scharnhorst are reported continually. All three are sunk by war's end. 300 underground newspapers spring up. Sabotage of all kinds is plotted and executed. Names like Max Manus, leader of the crack saboteurs known as the Oslo Gang, and Jens Christian Hoge, lawyer turned home front resistance head, become legendary. The Gestapo reacts swiftly. Hidden resistance cameras record the terror in the streets. World War II's most important act of sabotage takes place in Norway, at the Norsk hydroelectric plant at Ryuken, producer of heavy water, deuterium oxide, a chemical vital to the pursuit of the atomic bomb. The Allies are convinced Germans in Norway are experimenting with heavy water to produce atomic explosions. An airdrop of 32 British commandos fails to reach the plant. In February 1943, 6 Norwegians are given the job.
I was dropped in as a wireless operator in the first group. After we had been up in the mountains several months and got all the information about the plant, another group was brought in and the plant attacked. The attack proved to be a complete success. All the machinery in the plant was destroyed.
In November, American bombers finished the job. After the war, British authorities say that if this plant had not been destroyed, Nazi Germany might have had the atomic bomb before we did. By 1944, Allied air power is shattering the German fleet, hiding in Norwegian fjords. The Luftwaffe is disintegrating. Norwegian resistance is tying down 500,000 Germans, desperately needed by Hitler in collapsing Europe. The Russians have crossed into North Norway. The tide has turned. The end is in sight. On May 7th, 1945, it is all over. After 5 cruel occupation years, Norwegian justice moves swiftly. 17,000 quisling collaborators are arrested. The German Reichskommissar, Josef Terboven, retreats to an air raid shelter, lights a fuse attached to a ton of explosives, and blows himself up. Arrested and tried for treason, Vidkun Quisling will be shot by a firing squad on October 24th, 1945. History will remember only his name, synonym for traitor. For those German troops trapped in Norway, conquerors now confined, treatment is correct but vigorous. At Greenie concentration camp, where so many have suffered, there is a final poignant muster. During the occupation, 40,000 Norwegians have been arrested. Some 2,000 of them have died. 336 innocent hostages have been executed in a vain attempt to stop the persistent sabotage. Now the liberated prisoners march into Oslo, there to join in a swirl of freedom their fellow citizens, men of the resistance who need hide no more. Norwegian expeditionary forces return to their homeland. And finally, on 2 joyous days, their crown prince and their king. These days were anticipated in 1942 in words spoken by an American president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. If there is anyone who still wonders why this war is being fought, let him look to Norway. If there is anyone who has any delusions that this war could have been averted, let him look to Norway. And if there is anyone who doubts of the democratic will to win, again I say, let him look to Norway.